Hey folks, welcome back for another build video where we are looking at the Door Kicker's Knock, which is a named chess piece. And right off the bat, I do want to note that this is a Dark Zone exclusive item, so not everyone out there is going to have this piece. But don't worry too much, even though this is a build that focuses around the Door Kicker's Knock and the Perfect Spark talent. If you don't have this piece, you can absolutely still run this build with a normal version of Spark, because the difference between the named variant and the non-named is just an additional 5 seconds of duration. As you can read down there, damaging enemies with a skill increases total weapon damage by 15% for 20 seconds on the perfect version. On the normal version, it is 15% weapon damage for 15 seconds, which is still entirely usable and a lot of fun to run with. But right off the top, I do want to say that if you clicked on this video and you realized you don't have a Door Kicker's Knock, don't feel like you have to click away. You can absolutely still use this with a normal Grupo Sombra chess piece with Spark on it. With that out of the way, let's get into our specialization. We have gone with the Technician, specifically for the +1 skill tier that it provides. As you can see down there, we're not getting any skill tiers on our gear. As you can see down there with our gear, we're not getting any additional skill tiers, which might feel a little weird given that we're running an assault turret and a drone, but as you'll see later, those are merely to proc Spark and give us some additional weapon damage. So while I added one skill tier here to get us from tier 0 to tier 1, it's not entirely essential, and if you don't want to go with the Technician specialization, Gunner is another great place to go as it pairs really well with most red DPS builds. For our primary weapon, we've gone with the Test Subject, specifically because it has the perfectly in sync talent. Hitting an enemy grants 20% skill damage for 5 seconds, and using a non-shield skill or damaging an enemy with a skill grants plus 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds. And on top of that, damage increases are doubled while both buffs are active at the same time. And given that we are using an assault turret and a striker drone, which provide a lot of additional skill damage, the way you should read this is that you are getting 40% weapon damage for 5 seconds whenever you hit an enemy. For a secondary weapon, we've gone with the Scorpio shotgun for no other reason than it is a fantastic exotic shotgun with an altogether phenomenal talent, Septic Shock. Shooting a target applies stacks of venom, which lasts for 10 seconds. Increasing stack adds more severe debuffs to the target. I'll let you read those specific things while I go on a little bit. This is a great secondary weapon, particularly for a red DPS build. It's going to be hitting incredibly hard as it is based on the 612 shotgun. But on top of that, the stun lock provided by Disorient and Shock are great ways to control higher level enemies while you take away their armor and take away their health. For a sidearm, we've gone with the TDI card custom because it does give us that +1 skill tier when we have it equipped. And given that we do have active offensive skills here, there are situationally times where you might want to switch to your sidearm to provide that skill tier buff to both your assault turret and your striker drone. But with that, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this build. This is an all-red DPS build at its core, and while there are certainly other variations of an all-red DPS build that are going to hit harder and be more efficient if you min-max them, I am really enjoying this one because it provides a little bit of a different angle given that you do have active offensive skills between the assault turret and the striker drone. So for our mask, we've gone with Seska Varoba, which gives us plus 10% critical hit chance. Whenever you're looking to stack into critical hit chance, Seska is just a fantastic way to go. That plus 10% brand bonus is so powerful when you compare it to the secondary attribute where you can only get 6% per instance. Beyond that, there are no surprises here. We have the main weapon damage core, and then we've gone crit hit chance, crit hit damage, and crit hit damage in the mod slot. If you're going for a crit hit build, this is honestly what all of your non-named gear pieces should look like if you can get them. For the backpack, we've gone with the Gift, which is the named Providence Defense backpack, which does have the perfect vigilance talent on there. It increases total weapon damage by 25%, and taking damage disables that buff for 3 seconds. But similar to the Door Kicker's Knock, the perfect version of this talent is very good if you have it, but if you don't, you can absolutely still make this build work, given that the normal version of Vigilance still gives you an increase in weapon damage of 25%. It just has a longer disabled time if you take damage, that being 4 seconds instead of 3. So again, super similar comparison between Perfect Spark and Spark. Perfect Vigilance is a nice thing to have, but not entirely necessary to make this build work effectively. On top of that, we have a core attribute of weapon damage, crit hit chance, crit hit damage in the secondary attribute slots, and then crit hit damage again in the mod slot. And then of course here we have the main piece of this build, the Door Kicker's Knock. One piece of Grupo Sombra gets us plus 15% critical hit damage. And then again, we have weapon damage, crit hit chance, and crit hit damage in the mod slot. And then finally, again, we have the perfect spark talent, which is absolutely one I slept on for a very long time. But when you think about it, between the assault turret and the striker drone, you should have this active almost 100% of the time that you're in combat. Both skills are capable of proccing this talent, and once they do, it is active for 20 seconds before it needs to be procced again. Next up, we have Contractor's Gloves, which is a staple on pretty much any DPS build these days. The plus 10% LMG damage is entirely wasted, but that plus 8% damage to armor in the secondary attribute slot is just so powerful when it comes to the damage calculation. On top of that, we have a red weapon core and additional critical hit damage in that secondary attribute slot. And for our holster, we have our second piece of Providence Defense. Given that we've gone with the gift to get the perfect vigilance, adding a second piece of Providence Defense gives us that plus 10% critical hit chance bonus. In the same way we said that Seska is always so powerful, the additional 10% provided by Providence Defense is equally as powerful here. On top of that, we have some additional crit hit chance and crit hit damage in those secondary attribute slots. And last but not least, we have Fox's Prayer on our knee pads. Overlord armaments, 1 of 3 gives us plus 10% rifle damage, also being wasted, but also that plus 8% damage to target out of cover down there is just incredibly powerful, maximizing the amount of damage that we can do. And then again, we have our last instance of critical hit damage and another weapon damage core, bringing us to our total of 6. And then for our skills, I've already mentioned them, but we have the assault turret and the striker drone. And again, while I will fully concede that this is not the min-maxed best version of a red DPS build that you can make, I particularly enjoy it because again, it is a little bit of a twist. If you want to go all red but don't want to go with the flow, you want to zig where everyone zags a little bit, try out Perfect Spark, try out Spark on a Group of Sombra chest piece. It feels absolutely phenomenal, and you don't have to give up your drone or your turret. Now, with that all being said, who would I be if I didn't try a Ninja Bike Messenger Bag twist on this build? So as I was conceding earlier, Perfect Spark is absolutely not the out-and-out best way to provide weapon damage, but what it is a great variation on an all-red DPS build that still provides you boatloads of weapon damage. But for those of you who don't want to try out Door Kicker's Knock because it isn't the meta, it isn't the way to min-max your build for an all-red damage per second build, I wanted to submit this variation on my own build where we introduce the Ninja Bike Messenger Backpack and Picaro's holster to pick up some additional brand bonuses and skill tiers. So right off the bat, I will concede that we have to drop the overall crit hit damage that we can do here, given that we're losing 3 secondary attribute slots between the Ninja Bike Messenger Backpack and Picaro's holster. But I will say this still does a fantastic amount of weapon damage, and what we pick up is obviously an armor core, a skill tier, and the lovely Resourceful Talent, which gives us an additional brand bonus for any brand that we happen to be wearing, which is particularly critical given the holster swap that we've done here, swapping out the Providence Defense for Picaro's holster, which is the Brazos de Arquebus, gives us both skill haste and, more crucially, the +1 skill tier. On top of that, as you can see there, we've rerolled the core attribute to another skill tier, and then we have crit hit chance in the secondary attribute slot that we could have modified. And then we also have that weapon damage core down there, which keeps us at 6 weapon damage cores, though obviously we have to trade a secondary attribute slot to make that happen. So again, the crit hit damage is obviously lower than the previous variation, but it is still significant, and what you do gain is 3 additional skill tiers between the 1 on the Ninja Bike Messenger Backpack and the 2 on the holster here. You're now rocking tier 4 skills between the assault turret and the striker drone. As you can see there, we've upped our damage and health bonuses to 80% and 280% respectively. So overall, you're improving your turret, you're improving your drone, you are sacrificing some weapon damage, but I did want to put this out as it's a very obvious variation to me to increase your skill damage while still maintaining a significant amount of weapon damage on what is still a 6-core red DPS build. With that all being said, don't take my word for it. Take this one for a spin. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Let me know if you have any other unique twists on an all-red DPS build that you want to share. I am more than happy to put them together and put the video out there for everyone to see. But most importantly, as always, thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, and tell your friends about the channel so we can continue to grow, make weird stuff like this, and I will see you in the next one.
Detected. Detected. Incoming hostiles detected. Additional hostile contacts. Detected. In location. Got it. Supply convoy nearby. Hostiles detected.